Alan Carter stared at the tiny crack in the wall of his cell. 3 years. It had been 3 years since he was taken from Earth while working the night shift at the Nebraska power plant. 3 years of watching, waiting, and planning in this alien prison. The Zexian detainment facility was not built for humans. It was made for the worst criminals in the galaxy. The prison floated in space near a neutron star. The star's gravity was so strong that any ship trying to escape would be crushed unless it used the exact path the prison ships took. Alan wasn't supposed to be here. Someone made a mistake. He should have been in a research lab with the other humans. Instead, he was locked up with killers and monsters from 100 different worlds. His cell was small, with strange purple light that hurt his eyes. The air smelled like metal and something sweet that made him feel sick. Through his tiny window, he could see the neutron star glowing blue in the distance. The aliens who ran the prison called themselves the Hegemony. They ruled most of the galaxy. They had found Earth 5 years ago and decided humans were too dangerous to join their society. So they took some humans to study them, and Alan was one of them. The guards were tall with blue skin and 4 arms. They looked down on Alan as if he were an animal. They spoke their own language, but Alan listened carefully every day and learned many of their words. The guards never guessed that he could understand them. "The human is quiet today," said a guard named Vex as he passed Alan's cell. "They're all quiet until they snap," said his partner. "Remember what happened at the research station? 3 guards, dead because they didn't watch the human carefully." Alan kept his face blank, but inside he smiled. The guards were afraid of humans. This was useful information. In his cell, Alan had collected small pieces of metal and plastic from his meals, and the cleaning robot. He had hidden them inside a tear in his thin mattress. With these pieces, he had made tools. Nothing that looked dangerous, just things that could help him open doors or disable security systems. Alan knew about security systems. Before he was taken, he had worked maintaining the power plant's electrical grid. The aliens didn't know this. They thought he was just another human specimen. Today was different from other days. The neutron star was more active, sending out waves of energy that made the prison's lights flicker. Alan had noticed that these solar storms happened every few months, and each time the prison's security systems had small failures. He sat on his bed and waited. The storm would peak soon. The guards would be busy making sure the prison stayed in orbit. It was time. The lights flickered again, then went out completely. Emergency lights came on, casting red shadows across the cell. Alan moved quickly. He pulled out his tools and went to work on the door panel. In the darkness, his fingers moved skillfully over the alien technology. It wasn't so different from Earth systems. Energy was energy. Circuits were circuits. After 3 years of watching repair workers fix things in the prison, Alan understood how it all worked. The door slid open with a soft hiss. Alan stepped into the hallway, staying close to the wall. The guards would be at the control room during the emergency. He had maybe 10 minutes. He moved down the corridor to cell B217, where a large 4-armed alien named Krell was kept. Krell was a mercenary who had fought against the Hegemony. The guards feared him, but Alan had spoken to him through the air vents. They had made a deal. Alan opened Krell's cell using the same trick. The large alien stepped out, his red eyes glowing in the emergency light. "You did it, human," Krell said in his deep voice. "I didn't think you would." "I keep my promises," Alan said. "Now we need to find Nyx." Nyx was in cell D105. She looked almost human, except for her silver skin and completely black eyes. She was a telepath who traded in secrets. The Hegemony had locked her away because she knew too much. "The human freed you too?" Nyx asked Krell, as Alan opened her cell. "We need to reach the hangar," Alan said. "Can you find us a path with few guards?" Nyx closed her eyes. Her face tensed with concentration. "Level 3 corridor is clear. The guards are dealing with a power failure in the north wing." They moved through the prison like shadows. When they had to, they fought. Krell was strong, able to snap metal with his 4 arms. Nyx could sense guards before they appeared, and Alan was far stronger than the aliens expected a human to be. Why are they so afraid of humans? Alan asked as they hid in a storage room. Your kind is different, Nyx whispered. Most species evolved to be specialists. The Zexians have 4 arms but weak legs. The Vril have perfect memory but can't create new ideas. Humans are adaptable. You can live almost anywhere, learn almost anything, and you're aggressive in a way most advanced species aren't anymore. An alarm sounded through the prison. Their escape had been discovered. We need to move faster, Krell said. They fought their way to the hangar bay. 3 guards tried to stop them, but Krell knocked them down. Alan took a weapon from one of the fallen guards, a rod that sent out bursts of energy when he pressed a button. In the hangar, there were 5 ships. 4 were small fighters. 1 was a transport used to bring supplies to the prison. The transport, Alan said. It will have navigation charts and enough room for all of us. It's too slow, Krell argued. We'll never escape the star's gravity. Well, trust me, Alan said. I've been studying the ships coming and going for 3 years. I know how they work. They ran to the transport as more alarms sounded. The hangar doors began to close. Inside the ship, Alan moved to the control panel. The symbols were alien, but he had watched the pilots. He knew which buttons to press. The ship hummed to life. Guards ran into the hangar, firing energy weapons. The blast hit the ship's hull but didn't break through. They're sealing the hangar doors, Nick shouted. Alan's fingers danced over the controls. The ship rose from the floor. Its engines glowed blue. We'll never make it through the gravity well, Krell said again. The engines aren't strong enough. We don't need strength, Alan said. We need the right path. He turned the ship toward a small opening in the hangar doors. The guards were still shooting. The ship shook with each hit. Hold on, Alan said. He pushed the engines to full power. The ship shot forward, barely fitting through the gap in the doors. They were in space, with the blue glow of the neutron star pulling at them. The prison became smaller behind them. Ahead was darkness and freedom. How are you doing this? Nyx asked, looking at the controls. The gravity should be crushing us. I watched every ship that came and went, Alan explained. There's a path, a corridor where the gravity is weaker. The pilots use it, but they don't think anyone else knows about it. The ship moved away from the prison, following the invisible path Alan had memorized. Behind them, alarm signals lit up the prison like a Christmas tree. No one has ever escaped from Zexian detainment, Krell said, his voice filled with wonder. It's impossible. Nothing is impossible, Alan said, watching the stars. Humans don't believe in impossible. As they accelerated into deep space, Alan thought about Earth. He would find a way back someday. But first, he needed to understand this galaxy and why the aliens feared humans so much. The prison disappeared behind them. Ahead was freedom and danger and answers. The human had escaped. Now the galaxy would never be the same. Warden Thrixval was not happy. The tall blue alien stood in the control room of Zexian detainment facility, looking at the empty space where the transport ship had been. No one had ever escaped from his prison before. Now 3 prisoners were gone, including a human. Tell me again how this happened, Thrixval said to the head of security. The solar storm caused a power failure. The human used this to open his cell. Then he freed 2 other prisoners, the security chief explained. They stole a transport and somehow navigated through the gravity well. Impossible, Thrixval said. No one can find that path without our navigation data. The human watched. Our ships for 3 years. He must have figured it out. Thrixval slammed his 4 fists on the table. Find them. Call the Hegemony Security Council. Tell them we have a human loose in the galaxy. Far away from the prison, Alan, Krell, and Nyx sat in the small control room of the stolen ship. They had escaped, but now they needed a plan. We need to get to Omega Station, Krell said. It's a trading hub on the edge of hegemony space. We can hide there. They'll be looking for this ship, Nyx said. We need to change how it looks or get a new one. Alan looked at the ship's control panel. I can change the ship's ID code. It's like changing a license plate. But we need supplies and fuel. Nyx closed her black eyes, concentrating. I'm sensing a small mining outpost 3 light jumps from here. Not many hegemony guards. We could stop there. Can you fly us there? Krell asked Alan. Alan nodded. I think so. The controls are strange, but I'm getting used to them. The ship jumped through space, leaving blue trails behind it. Alan felt his stomach turn with each jump. Space travel was still new to him. Meanwhile, on the hegemony capital world, a special meeting was called. The Security Council sat around a large table. They were the leaders of the most powerful species in the galaxy. A human has escaped from Zexion, one counselor said. This is a serious concern. Why? Another asked. It's just one primitive being from a quarantined world. You don't understand the danger, said a tall, thin alien with gray skin. Humans are not like us. They think differently. They solve problems in ways we don't expect. Send Commander Zara, someone suggested. She has never failed to capture. A fugitive, they all agreed. Commander Zara was the best hunter in the hegemony. She would find the human and the other escaped prisoners. Commander Zara was eating dinner when she got the call. She was a member of the Vexil species, with purple skin and eyes that could see in the dark. She had been hunting criminals for 50 years. A human? She asked, looking at the report. I've never hunted a human before. They're dangerous, her superior told her. Unpredictable. This one escaped from Zexion. Zara raised her eyebrows. No one escaped from Zexion. This human must be special. I'll find him, she promised. Back on the stolen ship, Alan and his friends had reached the mining outpost. It was a small station built into an asteroid. Ships came and went, carrying ore and supplies. I'll go first, Krell said. I know places like this. You two wait until I signal it's safe. Alan watched through the window as Krell walked into the station. The alien was big and strong, but he moved carefully, watching for danger. Why are humans feared so much? Alan asked Nyx while they waited. We're not the strongest or smartest species. Nyx turned her silver face to him. It's not about being the strongest or smartest. It's about being unpredictable. Most species in the galaxy evolved to be very good at one thing, but humans can do many things fairly well. You adapt quickly. You survive in conditions that would kill others. And you have a drive that most species lost long ago. What drive? The need to explore, to push limits, to see what's possible. Nyx looked out at the stars. Most species in the galaxy are content with what they have. Humans always want more. Krell returned to the ship. The station is safe. Not many hegemony supporters here. I found someone who can help us get to Omega Station. They followed Krell into the station. The air smelled like oil and strange spices. Aliens of all shapes and sizes walked through the halls. Some looked almost human. Others were so strange that Alan couldn't tell which part was their face. Krell led them to a small shop. Inside, a woman with blonde hair stood behind a counter. Alan stopped, surprised. You're human, he said. The woman looked up. So are you. I'm Susan Miller. I heard there was another human on the station. She looked at Krell. You didn't say he was a prison escapee? How did you know? Alan asked. The prison jumpsuit was a clue, Susan said, pointing to Alan's clothes. Plus, there's an alert out for a human and 2 aliens who stole a transport from Zexion. We need to get to Omega Station, Krell said. Susan nodded. I can help, but it'll cost you. We don't have money, Alan said. Then you'll work for me, Susan replied. I run supplies between stations. I need a crew. Alan looked at his friends. They nodded. Deal, Alan said. Susan took them to her ship. It was larger than their stolen transport and painted black with red stripes. Inside, it was filled with boxes and strange machine parts. We'll leave in an hour, Susan said. First, new clothes for all of you and food. You look hungry. She gave them clean clothes and a hot meal. It was the first real food Alan had eaten in 3 years. It tasted strange. Not like Earth food, but it was good. How long have you been out here? Alan asked Susan. 5 years, she said. I was on a deep space mission when my ship was captured by the hegemony. They were going to put me in a research facility, but I escaped during transport. There are more humans out here? Susan nodded. About 200 that I know of. We have a network. We help each other. Some of us are trying to find Earth again, but the hegemony keeps its location secret. Alan felt hope for the first time in years. He wasn't alone. As they prepared to leave, the station alarms went off. A voice spoke over the speakers in several languages. Attention all ships. This is a hegemony security alert. We are searching for 3 escaped prisoners. A human male, a Kronos mercenary, and a Thalen telepath. All ships will be searched before departure. They found us, Krell growled. Susan moved quickly, opening a hidden panel in the floor of her ship. Get in, hurry. They climbed into the small space. Susan closed the panel just as someone knocked on the ship's door. Through a small crack, Alan could see Susan open the door. A tall purple alien stood there with several armed guards. Commander Zara, Susan said. Welcome aboard my ship. What can I do for the hegemony today? We're searching all ships, Commander Zara said. We're looking for fugitives. Search away, Susan said. I have nothing to hide. Commander Zara and her guards entered the ship. Alan held his breath as their boots thumped on the floor above him. If they were found, they would go back to prison, or worse. What's in these boxes? Commander Zara asked. Machine parts, Susan replied. I'm a trader. I have all the proper permits. The search went on for what felt like hours. Finally, Commander Zara spoke again. Your ship is clear. You may leave when the lockdown ends. After they left, Susan opened the panel. That was close. Commander Zara is the best hunter in the hegemony. If she's looking for you, you're in serious trouble. How did she not find us? Nix asked. She walked right over us. Susan smiled. My hiding spot blocks telepathic and thermal scans. I've had to hide from the hegemony before. When the station lockdown ended, Susan's ship left the asteroid. As they accelerated away, Alan looked back. A large hegemony cruiser hung in space near the station, dark and threatening. They won't give up, Susan said. But Omega Station is safer. There are more humans there, and the hegemony has less control. Alan watched the stars streak by as they jumped to light speed. He had escaped one prison, but the whole galaxy felt like another kind of prison now. He was being hunted. But for the first time, he had hope. There were other humans out here. Together, maybe they could find a way home. What he didn't know yet was that his escape had started something much bigger than just one human's bid for freedom. Across the galaxy, people were already talking about the human who had done the impossible. Susan's ship arrived at Omega Station 3 days later. The station was huge, spinning slowly in space. It looked like a giant metal wheel with lights glowing from thousands of windows. Ships of all sizes moved around it like bees around a hive. Omega Station is not controlled by the hegemony, Susan explained as they approached. It's run by a council of different species. Some call it lawless, but it has its own rules. Alan watched through the window. After years in prison, the sight of so many ships and buildings made him feel small. How will we get in? He asked. Won't they be looking for us here too? I have friends, Susan said, and fake IDs for all of you. She handed them small metal cards. Alan looked at his. The picture looked like him, but the name read John Cole, trader from the Outer Rim. The station scanners will match these IDs to your biosignatures, Susan said. As far as anyone knows, you're free citizens, not escaped prisoners. Their ship docked at a port on the lower ring of the station. Susan led them through crowded hallways filled with aliens of all kinds. Some were tall and thin, others short and wide. Some had too many eyes or arms or legs. Some floated instead of walked. Alan stayed close to his friends. After years in a cell, the crowds made him nervous, but he was also amazed. This was what the galaxy was really like. Busy, noisy, alive. Susan took them to a bar called the Event Horizon. Inside, the lights were dim and music played. The music was strange to Alan's ears, with sounds he had never heard before. In a back room, several humans sat around a table. They looked up when Susan entered. I brought some new friends, Susan said. This is Alan. He escaped from Zexion. The humans stared at Alan. One of them, a man with a beard and scars on his face, stood up. I'm Greg, he said. No one escapes from Zexion. He did, Krell said. I saw it with my own eyes. Greg looked at Alan with new respect. Sit down. Tell us how. Alan sat and told his story. The humans listened closely. When he finished, the room was quiet. This changes things, Greg said finally. The hegemony tells everyone that their prisons are escape-proof, that humans are contained, but you proved them wrong. Why do they keep humans prisoner? Alan asked. What are they afraid of? Greg leaned forward. The hegemony has ruled the galaxy for thousands of years. They decide which species can join galactic society and which are too dangerous. Most species evolved past their aggressive instincts. Humans didn't. We're not that aggressive, Alan said. Greg laughed. By their standards, we're monsters. We adapt too quickly. We take risks. We fight even when we're hurt. Most species surrender when injured. So we're being kept prisoner because we're different? Worse than that, Susan said. They're using us. We've discovered that different factions in the hegemony are experimenting on humans, trying to use our biology for their own purposes. What purposes? Nix asked. Warfare, mostly, Greg said. The hegemony hasn't fought a real war in centuries. Most conflicts are settled through diplomacy or small controlled battles. But some factions want more power, and humans make perfect weapons. Alan thought about this. The idea that his species was being used as weapons made him angry. We need to stop them, he said. Free the other humans. That's what we're trying to do, Susan said. We have a network of escaped humans and friendly aliens. We call ourselves the Freeborn. Greg stood up and went to a wall panel. He pressed some buttons and a map of the galaxy appeared. We've located several facilities where humans are being held, he said. Some are research labs, some are training centers. But recently we've heard about something called Project Ascension. What's that? Alan asked. We don't know exactly, Greg admitted. But it involves hundreds of humans and high-level hegemony officials. It's their biggest project involving humans. Nix, who had been quiet, suddenly spoke. I've heard of this. Before I was captured, I collected secrets. Project Ascension is run by members of the Hegemony Security Council. They're trying to create something new, a combination of human bodies and alien minds. Everyone stared at her. How? Alan asked. They believe they can transfer consciousness from one body to another, Nix explained. They want to put the minds of ancient hegemony leaders into human bodies, leaders who have lived for centuries in old failing bodies. That's horrible, Susan said. It gets worse, Nix continued. They're changing the human bodies through genetic engineering, making them stronger, faster. But they keep the human adaptability and resilience. Where is this happening? Greg asked urgently. A place called Tartarus Deep, Nix said. It's hidden in an artificial nebula. Greg made a note on his datapad. We need to find this place. Their meeting was interrupted when the door burst open. A young human woman ran in. Hegemony ships just docked, she said out of breath. They're led by Commander Zara. They're searching for escaped prisoners. How did they find us so quickly? Susan wondered. Greg moved quickly. We need to split up. They're looking for 3 escapees traveling together. If you separate, you'll be harder to find. I'll take Alan, Susan said. He can hide on my ship. Krell, go with Jax to the lower levels. Nix, Greg will hide you. As they prepared to leave, Alan asked, what about the other humans and Project Ascension? We'll continue our work, Greg promised. Now that we know about Tartarus Deep, we can plan a rescue mission. But first, we all need to stay free. Alan followed Susan through back hallways and service tunnels. The station was huge, with many places to hide. Where are we going? Alan asked. My ship, Susan said. It's the last place they'll look since they already searched it. They reached the docking bay. Susan's ship sat where they had left it. They hurried inside, and Susan closed the door. Now we wait, she said. Alan sat in the control room watching through the window. He could see hegemony soldiers in black uniforms moving through the station, stopping people, checking IDs. "How long can we hide?" he asked. "Not long," Susan admitted. "But we have friends. The station security doesn't like the hegemony either. They'll slow the search down." Alan looked at the stars beyond the station. "I want to fight back, not just run." Susan smiled. "That's very human of you. Most species would accept their fate." "Is that why they fear us? Because we don't give up?" "Partly," Susan said. "But it's more than that. You escaped from an inescapable prison. That scares them more than anything. If one human can do that, what could many humans do?" Alan thought about Earth so far away, about the other humans held prisoner across the galaxy, about this Project Ascension that sounded so terrible. "I need to learn more," he said. "About the hegemony, about space travel, about fighting their ships. If we're going to free the other humans, I need to know what I'm doing." Susan nodded. "I can teach you. Greg can teach you. But it will take time." "How much time?" "Months, maybe a year. We need to be careful. Move slowly. Build our strength." Alan was impatient, but he understood. Freedom wasn't enough. He needed knowledge and allies if he was going to save his people. Outside, an announcement echoed through the station. "Attention all residents. Hegemony security forces are conducting a routine inspection. Please cooperate fully. This is not a lockdown." "Routine inspection," Susan scoffed. "They're hunting you. You've scared them, Alan. One human escaping their best prison has thrown their whole system into chaos." Alan looked at the stars again. "Good," he said. "Chaos is just the beginning." What he didn't know yet was how right he was. Across the galaxy, news of his escape was spreading. On planets and stations far from Omega, people were telling the story of the human who had done the impossible. For species that had been under hegemony control for centuries, it was more than a story. It was hope, and in her ship orbiting Omega Station, Commander Zara was beginning to wonder about the human she was hunting. The reports she had read didn't make sense. Humans weren't supposed to be clever enough to escape Zexion. They weren't supposed to understand alien technology or navigate gravity wells. What if the hegemony was wrong about humans? What if they were more than just dangerous primitives? The galaxy was changing, all because one human had refused to stay in his cell. 6 months passed. Alan learned quickly. Susan taught him how to fly her ship through asteroid fields and jump points. Greg taught him about alien weapons and how to use them. Other humans taught him alien languages and customs. Each day he grew, stronger and smarter about this new galaxy he found himself in. The Freeborn had hidden bases on several stations and small moons. They moved often to avoid the hegemony. Alan spent time at each base, learning and teaching what he knew about prison. Security Krell and Nick stayed with the Freeborn too. Krell taught fighting skills to anyone who wanted to learn. Nix gathered information with her telepathic abilities. They became valued members of the Resistance. One day, Greg called a meeting on a small moon base. All the Freeborn leaders gathered, in a room carved from rock. Maps and plans covered the walls. "We've found Tartarus Deep," Greg announced. "Our scouts located it in the Red Nebula sector." He showed images on a screen. A strange cloud of purple gas floated in space. Inside it, sensors had detected a large station. "This is where Project Ascension is happening," Greg said. "Where they're putting alien minds into human bodies." "How many humans are there?" Alan asked. "We think around 300, Greg replied. "But the station is heavily guarded. 20 hegemony warships protect it. We need to free them," Alan said. "I agree," said Greg. "But how?" "We have 6 small ships. They have warships with weapons that could destroy us in seconds." The room fell silent. The problem seemed impossible. Then Susan spoke up. "What if we don't attack directly? What if we sneak in?" "The station will have security scans," Krell said. "They'll detect any ship." "Not if we have help from the inside," Nick said quietly. Everyone looked at her. "What do you mean?" Greg asked. "I've been scanning communications," Nix explained. "There's someone inside the hegemony who might help us." Someone who doesn't agree with Project Ascension. Who? Alan asked. Commander Zara. The room erupted in angry shouts. She's hunting us, someone yelled. She works for the hegemony, another shouted. Nix waited for quiet. Yes, but she's been asking questions, looking into files she's not supposed to see. I think she's discovered that Project Ascension breaks the hegemony's own laws. Even if that's true, why would she help us? Greg asked. Because she believes in the hegemony's laws more than she believes in the hegemony's leaders, Nick said. I can feel her conflict when I scan her communications. Alan thought about this. How do we contact her? I can send a message, Nick said. A telepathic message that only she will hear. If she's willing to talk, I'll know. Greg looked uncertain. It's risky. Everything is risky, Alan said. But if she can help us get into Tartarus Deep, it's worth trying. They agreed to let Nix try. She sat in a quiet room, her silver face calm as she reached out with her mind across space. Hours passed. Finally, she opened her eyes. She will meet with us, Nix said. Just one of us. On a neutral planet called Viridian. I'll go, Alan said immediately. Greg shook his head. You're the most wanted fugitive in the galaxy. It's too dangerous. That's exactly why I should go, Alan argued. She wants to see the human who escaped from Zexion, and if it's a trap, you won't lose your leader. After much debate, they agreed. Susan would fly Alan to Viridian in her ship. They would be ready to leave quickly if things went wrong. Viridian was a small planet covered in blue forests. Susan landed her ship in a clearing near the meeting point. Alan checked his weapon, a small energy gun that fit in his palm. Be careful, Susan said. Commander Zara has caught hundreds of fugitives. None have escaped her. I've done the impossible before, Alan reminded her. He walked into the blue forest alone. The trees had strange curved trunks and leaves that seemed to sing in the wind. The meeting place was a small lake with green water. Commander Zara was already there. She stood by the lake, her purple skin bright against the blue trees. She wore no uniform, just simple traveling clothes. But Alan could see the outline of a weapon under her jacket. You came alone, she said as he approached. That was brave, or foolish. You came alone too, Alan pointed out. I didn't bring guards, but my ship is watching from orbit. If I don't return, they will burn this forest to ash. Alan nodded. Why did you agree to meet me? Zara studied him with her dark eyes. I wanted to see the human who escaped from Zexion, to understand what makes your kind so special that the Security Council would break their own sacred laws. What laws did they break? The law of sentient rights, Zara said. No sentient being can be used against their will for experimentation. Yet Project Ascension does exactly that. So you know what they're doing, Alan said. I know they're transferring the minds of old council members into enhanced human bodies, Zara confirmed. I know they're creating weapons and soldiers from human genetic material, all illegal under hegemony law. Will you help us stop them? Zara paced along the edge of the lake. The hegemony has ruled the galaxy for 10,000 years. It has brought peace to 1,000 worlds. But peace built on lies and broken laws is no peace at all. That's not an answer, Alan said. I will help you, Zara said finally. Not because I care about humans, but because I care about the law. The council has gone too far. How can you help? I can give you security codes for Tartarus Deep. I can tell my fleet to be in another sector during your attack. I can provide the patrol schedules. She paused. But in return, I want something from you. What? Evidence, Zara said. Proof of what the council is doing. Recordings, documents, anything that shows they broke the law. I needed to expose them to the rest of the hegemony. Alan considered this. Why should I trust you? You shouldn't, Zara said simply. Just as I shouldn't trust you. But sometimes enemies must work together against a greater evil. They talked for an hour, making plans. Zara gave Alan a small data crystal with security codes. In return, he promised to collect evidence from Tartarus Deep. When Alan returned to Susan's ship, she was surprised to see him alive. "She's going to help us," he told Susan. "She'll give us a way into Tartarus Deep." Back at the Freeborn base, they made their battle plan. Greg would lead the main attack force as a distraction. Susan, Alan, Krell, and Nix would slip into the station using Zara's codes. They would free the human prisoners and collect evidence of the illegal experiments. "If Zara keeps her word, the defending fleet will be reduced," Greg said. "But this is still incredibly dangerous. Many of us won't come back." Alan looked around the room at the humans and aliens who had become his friends. They were all willing to risk their lives to stop Project Ascension and free the captive humans. "The hegemony thinks humans are dangerous because we don't give up," Alan said. "Let's show them how right they are." 2 days later, their small fleet left the moon base. 6 ships, each filled with fighters. They headed for the Red Nebula and Tartarus Deep. This was the moment everything changed. Either they would succeed and free hundreds of humans, or they would fail and die trying. As Alan sat in Susan's ship watching the stars streak by, he thought about how far he had come. From a prisoner in a cell to the leader of a mission that might change the galaxy. He had escaped one prison. Now it was time to free everyone else. Behind them, on her own ship, Commander Zara sent a message to her fleet, ordering them to another sector for a training exercise. Then she sat back and wondered if she had just saved the hegemony by upholding its laws, or if she had just helped destroy it. The purple gas of the Red Nebula appeared ahead of them. Inside it waited Tartarus Deep, the most secure facility in the galaxy, even more secure than Zexian prison. But Alan had escaped the impossible once. He could do it again. "Ready for the biggest prison break in galactic history?" Susan asked. Alan nodded. "The hegemony isn't ready for what humans can do when we work together." The ships entered the nebula, vanishing into the purple gas. The final battle was about to begin. The purple gas of the Red Nebula swirled around their ships. It was so thick that sensors could barely see through it. This was why the hegemony had built Tartarus Deep here, to keep it hidden. "Security codes ready?" Susan asked as she piloted her ship. Alan nodded. He held the data crystal Commander Zara had given him. Let's hope she didn't lie to us. Their plan was simple but dangerous. Greg's ships would attack the front of the station, drawing attention and fire. Meanwhile, Susan's ship would slip in through a service entrance using Zara's security codes. "There it is," Krell said, pointing at the screen. Tartarus Deep appeared through the purple gas. It was enormous, bigger than Omega Station. It looked like a black star with metal arms reaching out in all directions. Ships patrolled around it, but fewer than they had expected. Zara had kept her word about moving some of the fleet. "Everyone ready?" Susan asked. Alan checked his weapon. Krell flexed his forearms. Nix closed her eyes, reaching out with her mind to scan the station. "I sense many humans inside," she said. "They're alive, but their minds are strange, changed, somehow." "Project Ascension," Alan said grimly. "We need to hurry." Greg's voice came through the communication system. "Attack force ready, starting our run in 3, 2, 1. Bright flashes lit up the purple nebula as Greg's ships began firing at the station's main docking bay. Alarms blared across all channels. The patrol ships moved quickly toward the attack. "Now," Susan said, turning her ship toward a small doorway. On the underside of the station, Alan transmitted the security codes. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the door began to open. "It worked," he said, relieved. Susan guided the ship into a narrow hangar. They landed quietly with no one to meet them. The distraction was working. "Remember the plan," Alan said as they prepared to leave the ship. "Find the humans, gather evidence, then get out. We have 2 hours before Greg must retreat." They moved through empty corridors, following a map Zara had provided. The station was huge, with many levels and sections. The part they wanted was deep inside, at the core. Suddenly, they heard footsteps. A group of guards appeared around a corner. Before anyone could react, Nick stepped forward, her hands raised. The guards stopped, their eyes going blank. "I've clouded their minds," she said. "They can't see us, but it won't last long." They hurried past the guards and reached a large door marked with strange symbols. "This is it," Alan said. "The main lab." Krell forced the door open with his strong arms. Inside was a large room filled with glass tubes. Each tube held a human floating in clear liquid. Wires and tubes connected to their bodies. Their eyes were open but empty. "There are hundreds of them," Susan whispered in horror. Alan checked the nearest tube. A man floated inside, his body changed. His muscles were larger, his skin thicker. On a screen next to the tube, alien writing scrolled by. "They're preparing these bodies," Alan said. "Getting them ready for the mind transfer." "We need to free them," Susan said. "First, we need evidence." Alan took out a small camera and began recording everything he saw. "This is what we promised. Zara." At the center of the room was a raised platform. On it stood a single tube larger than the others. A woman floated inside. Unlike the others, her eyes were alert and aware. She looked at Alan and the others as they approached. "She's still conscious," Nick said, surprised. Alan looked at the screen beside her tube. "Dr. Olivia West," he read, "human scientist, captured 5 years ago. They're using her to run the program because she understands human biology better than they do." "Can we get her out?" Susan asked. Alan studied the controls. "I think so." He pressed several buttons. The liquid in Olivia's tube drained away. The glass slid open. Olivia fell forward, and Alan caught her. "You're not hegemony," she gasped. "We're the freeborn," Alan said. "We've come to stop Project Ascension and free everyone." Olivia's legs were weak, but her mind was clear. "There's not much time. They're planning the first full transfer today. A council elder into a human body." "How do we free everyone?" Alan asked. "The master control panel." Olivia pointed to a large console across the room. "It controls all the tubes. But we need to be careful. These people have been in stasis for months or years. Waking them too quickly could kill them." An alarm suddenly blared through the station. A voice spoke in several languages. "Security breach in Section C. All guards report. Repeat, security breach in Section C. They've discovered us." Krell growled. "Hurry," Alan said. They went to the control panel. Olivia's hands moved quickly over the controls. "I'm starting a slow wake-up sequence," she explained. "It will take 30 minutes for them to be fully awake and able to move." "We don't have 30 minutes, Susan said. "We'll have to hold them off," Alan decided. "Susan, take Olivia back. To the ship. Start it up. Krell, Nix, and I will protect the lab until the humans wake up." Susan helped Olivia toward the door. Before they left, Olivia turned back. "There's something else you should know. The data core. It has everything. All the records of what they've done here. The names of everyone involved. It's on the level below us." Alan looked at Nix. "Can you get to it?" Nix nodded. "I'll try." She slipped away as footsteps approached the lab. Dozens of guards were coming. Alan and Krell took positions by the door, weapons ready. The first guards appeared. Alan and Krell fired, forcing them back. But more came. The battle at the door became fierce. "We can't hold them forever," Krell said as he fired his weapon. "We just need to buy time," Alan replied. In the tubes around them, the humans were beginning to move. Their eyes were opening. Some were raising their hands, pressing against the glass. Nix returned, holding a small black box. "I got it. The data core. Everything we need." "Good," Alan said. "Now we—" A new voice interrupted him. "Impressive, human." At the far end of the lab, a door had opened. A tall blue alien entered, flanked by 6 guards. It was Warden Thrix Val from Zexian Prison. "You are causing chaos throughout the galaxy," Thrix Val said. "First you escape my prison, now you attack our most secret facility. The Council was right about humans being dangerous." "The Council is breaking your own laws," Alan replied. "Experimenting on sentient beings, transferring minds into stolen bodies. Laws can be changed," Thrix Val said dismissively. "The Council has ruled for 10,000 years. They know what is best for the galaxy. Not anymore, came a new voice. Commander Zara stepped into the lab from another door. Behind her were soldiers in uniforms different from the guards. Commander? Thrix Val said, surprised. What are you doing here? You should be in Sector 7. I received evidence of crimes against the Hegemony Charter, Zara said. As a lawkeeper, I am bound to investigate. You're interfering with council business, Thrix Val warned. I'm upholding the law, Zara replied. She looked at Alan. Do you have the evidence? Alan nodded to Nix, who threw the data core to Zara. She caught it and quickly looked at its contents on a small screen. In the name of the Hegemony Charter and the Council of Laws, I am shutting down this facility, Zara announced. All prisoners will be freed. All personnel will be detained for questioning. Thrix Val laughed. You don't have the authority. But I do, said another voice. An elderly alien entered slowly, leaning on a cane. The guards immediately bowed. High Counselor Vex? Thrix Val said, suddenly nervous. I have seen enough, the old alien said. Commander Zara brought her concerns to me directly. I did not believe her until now. He looked around the lab at the humans in tubes. This is not what the hegemony stands for. We do not steal bodies. We do not experiment on sentient beings. Around them, the tubes were opening. Confused, weak humans were stepping out. Some fell to their knees, unable to stand after months in stasis. Help them, Alan told Krell. Then he turned to the High Counselor. What happens now? Now there will be trials, Vex said. The guilty will be punished. The hegemony will remember its founding principles. He looked at Alan with old wise eyes. And perhaps we will reconsider our policy toward humans. In the hours that followed, chaos turned to order. The humans were freed. Those who had been most changed by the experiments needed medical help, but most would recover. The station was secured by Zara's forces. Alan stood with Susan, Krell, and Nix on an observation deck, watching as ships arrived to transport the freed humans. What will you do now? Susan asked Alan. Find Earth, he said. Tell them what's out here. Make sure humans enter the galaxy as equals, not as weapons or test subjects. The hegemony is changing, Nix observed. For the first time in thousands of years, they're questioning themselves. All because one human escaped from prison. Alan smiled. Sometimes that's all it takes. One person who refuses to accept what seems impossible. 3 months later, Alan stood in a large hall on the hegemony, Capital World. The new council had asked him to speak as the representative of humanity. It was a historic moment, the first time a human had addressed the governing body of the galaxy. As he looked out at the hundreds of alien faces, Alan thought about his journey. From a prison cell to this moment, from a maintenance worker to a symbol of change. The galaxy was in chaos, he began, but sometimes chaos is needed to create a better order. Outside the hall, in cities and stations across the galaxy, billions of beings watched on screens. Among them were former prisoners, resistance fighters, and ordinary people who had heard the story of the human who escaped from an Inesca.